Okay, so let's look at Module 3. But just to give an overview of what we're working with at the moment, so we have the Mekong Delta of Cambodia open at the moment. We can see that rice is the dominant crop by a long way and slightly more valuable in the dry season than the wet season. We can see that flooding in the wet season is the most impactful climate challenge, followed by drought in the dry season. And that, rice in the wet season is more vulnerable slightly than rice in the dry season. So this is what you'll have at the start of the workshop. So as we said, this is then the landing page. This might be something that you would have up on your screen, on your projector as people walk in, and it just explains about the tool itself, how it was developed, what citation, if you want to go there, or any feedback. What we get then is this pre-fill summary. So this is essentially trying to say that these were the crops that were considered and the seasons, and this is the summary of value of production. We also, on the climate challenges, looked at 5 different climate challenges across 2 crop season combinations, and we got this expected value of loss due to climate challenges. So it's just a summary of what we went through before. And that leads us to our first starting point that we have, and that's just around registering people within the system. So if you'd like to do this before your workshop, you're more than welcome to do that as well. But a couple important things to cover is that you don't want more than 7 in a group because people can't speak up. So if you were to put 8 here, it will say that if you have a group larger than 7, please split into multiple groups. It does allow you to go smaller in the case that you really have to, but really the minimum number should be 4 that you would be running a workshop with. It's asking for name, organization, and email. So I'll just dump some things in there. Once you've put in the required number, so if it was 5, then it would ask you for additional. Once you've done that, it will allow you to progress to your Module 3 landing page. This is the Module 3 landing page, just going through what we're trying to do in Module 3. But essentially what we're doing is identifying options, looking at the different options, and then weighting the results to distinguish between the priorities for climate adaptation. And it's essentially about 6 hours, so it's a full day workshop that you'll need to properly go through this. So this is the first point of input into the workshop. So over this side, we have the expected damage by priority climate challenges. So we said before, flooding was highest, followed by drought and some others. So this workshop would like to understand the adaptation options available to address these climate challenges on the left side. We can't analyze a whole bunch. So what we're going to do is analyze 10, but we want to start off hearing everybody's opinion around the different options that they believe are relevant here. So these are the EIA categories of adaptation, and you can choose between 0 and 3 options for each of these. So a total list of 30. So if you put 0, it won't ask you for anything. If you put 1, it will ask you for 1 option, likewise 2, likewise 3. So as you go through, what you need to do is to populate the different options that you might have. So this is really the first point of facilitation within the workshop. You want to hear from everybody. You don't want somebody in this first session to feel excluded because their pet project that they did their PhD on, for instance, was not considered within here. So you've got the space to fill up to 30 different adaptation options here. So the point is to get everybody speaking and involved, even if it's just one person that thinks something. Because what we'll see is that whilst we have a list of 30 here, we couldn't possibly look at the different options of 30, and remembering to use the notes section. So what we have then is this idea of so what we have is a list of 15 different options. And what this says is that we don't have time. We can only assess 10 different options. So tell us, what are the 10, which is 3.3 through 3.12? What are the 10 options that you are going to analyze in this workshop? If you could not get it down to 10 and you've got time, then you can run the tool again by opening a clean file and adding the additional ones if you so had to. But we've got 3 options here: include, merge, and exclude. So what you will see as you go is if you put include, then nothing will happen. And it's in a drop-down menu. So if you put include, it will add it to the list for analysis. If you were to exclude, then it will ask you for the reason. So it might say that it's impossible for us to judge it, or there's some reason why you can't look at it. The other option then is merge. So for instance, we might want to bundle together direct seeded rice and stover retention. So what we would do is give that a merged name, and so that will come across as an option in the remaining amounts. You'll notice also that you can only go up to a certain amount. So once you reach 10, it will then say, it will exclude everything below by saying that your max options are already selected. That's the reason why they're excluded. In this case, just so we don't look at this all day, what we'll do is exclude the remaining modules, and we'll have to give a reason. So in this case, I'm just saying that if it's an example, but in the workshop, you're going to have a lot of discussion. There's going to be people that are going to advocate for specific options. So give everybody the time. It's really important, because if you exclude something that most of the people want in the workshop, then you'll negate the actual benefit of having the discussion within the workshop, and people will be offended. So make sure you take the time to really work through with the group. Particularly if one person's advocating for something that's excluded, you might in the notes say that we need to run this again at a separate time with this or whatnot. And again, some workshop notes. So it might be that a particular option was beloved by the group, but we couldn't agree to it, or there was real discussion 50-50 on a particular option. So, having your notes over here as well as over here, and these more around the broader thinking that occurred. So in this case, what we've done is we said that we're going to, for rice in the Mekong Delta of Cambodia, given these key priority climate challenges, we are going to assess 3 adaptation options: pondered rice varieties, early planting, and DSR and stover retention as a bundle. So you'll see in the first one here, 3.3, that we're talking about the pondered rice variety. In 3.4, we'll talk about early planting, and 3.5, we'll talk about the DSR and stover retention bundle. So that's how the tool takes this short list and goes forward. So this is what the 3.3 then looks like. What we've got, and sometimes you're going to have to adjust your column widths, because in different languages and different circumstances, it might need to be wider or not. So you grab the columns and then just double click them, and they'll automatically adjust to the width that's needed. So what's presented here is crop season hazard and the expected yield loss over the coming 10 years in impacted areas. So this is saying that rice in the dry season in areas that are vulnerable to drought, we're actually expecting across the 10 years a 31% yield loss. So that comes back from our calculations in module 2. What we're then asking is, if you were to, if a ponding rice variety was to be promoted and adopted, what would you expect the relationship of ponded rice and drought? What would you expect would happen with ponded rice and pest infestation? So you've got benefit, no change, or worsens. So ponded rice variety and drought, there's no real relationships. With high temperatures, maybe it's got some, because it's a new variety anyway, it might have a little benefit, and maybe it's, you know, quite small benefit, because it's primarily going to benefit in those flooding years, and maybe because it can survive that, so we're expecting a huge loss. So maybe it can negate the majority of that that impact. So that was the rice in the dry. In the wet, does it have any relationship? Maybe it wouldn't even be planted in the wet season because of the fact that it's primarily for the dry seasons. So what we would then do is that's like the economic side of things. But of course, it's not just the economics that will determine if something is a good adaptation option or not. So we've got these subgroupings that are important to understand. So the first one is the implications for farmers. So is a new variety, something that is easy, somewhat difficult, or very difficult for a farmer to transition to? So it's quite easy because it's just change in seed. In terms of the time frame to benefit, once they adopt, so it's within that season. So it's quite easy and you get relatively quick impact. We then have the system implications. So this then relates to what would happen on mass adoption. So would it increase the sustainability of the system? A varietal change probably doesn't really impact on the sustainability of a system. Does it impact on mitigation? So it doesn't really change emissions or climate change drivers. Is it friendly or unfriendly or neutral? Just so we've got something different. So we'll say that it's, for some reason, it's unfriendly to marginalized populations. So let's say it's more expensive and those marginalized populations can't afford it. So it might be unfriendly in that circumstance. The next element is the technological context. So in the evidence base, how proven is it that this is something good for farmers, and is it ready to go? So let's just say that this ponded rice variety doesn't exist yet. It's not ready for extension, and it's going to take 5 years to breed it and have it ready to be extended. So these are all things that you'll discuss as you're going. How aware of the community is the community of ponded rice, this particular ponded rice variety? So if it's not out there yet, then it might be really low. So if it's 5%, then it won't ask you for community perception or adoption level if it's below 10%. But let's say that 15% are aware. Those that are aware, let's just say that they're mostly positive, and the adoption level is still quite low. And then the final two questions that form part of this assessment are the government stance. So is it already supported by government? Is it likely within 5 or 10 years, or is it never likely to be supported? So let's just assume that it's supported by government, and usually something like varieties will be already linked with the private sector. So that's essentially, you pick an adaptation option and you go through the process of these different elements to assess how how high potential it is to provide benefit within the system. So once you've done that, it will progress you to the next assessment. So you might want to do 2 and then have morning tea, and 3 and then have lunch, and etc., etc. But it's the same template as we come throughout. So what I'll do is we'll just put in some junk data so we see what's going on. So I'll just do that. So I've just put in some very junk data in around early planting, and then around our third option of DSR and stover retention as a bundle. So what will happen, because we only had the 3 options here, then there's only 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, and it'll link you through to the results. If you had 4, 5, 6, then these will fill out as well. And in the workshop, I would expect that you're probably going to do close to 10 assessments, given that in the real world, when we've got time, there is lots to discuss here. So we click through here, and we have 2 results pages. So the first one is a straight economic analysis of the different adaptation options. So in this case, it said that the potential value of this ponded rice variety is $30 million US. When it comes to facing the flooding issue. Now that's because the flooding issue was the most expensive potential threat on the most expensive crop. So comparatively, when you sum all of these, the comparative benefit of this ponded rice variety is 34% of the total potential here. So it's saying that that's, a third of the potential benefit is just in this one adaptation option. So it could be quite high on the priorities list. So this is, a straight economic analysis. However, we know that economics is not everything. So what we actually see is if we come over here, over to this side, this is a weighting system. So it says that we know that economics is not everything. We can weight according to the priorities. So have a discussion in your workshop around how you want to weight things. So is it just the potential economic benefit? Is it 100%? We don't care about the others. Or is it the ability to provide multiple quick benefits? Is it the readiness of the option for promotion and scaling? So do we only prioritize things that are actually ready to go now? If we have to spend 5 years developing them in the context of the next 10 years of climate change, is that something that's going to really hamper our ability to adapt? And the social inclusivity. So what we could see before here was that the ponded rice variety came out really, really high on the pure economic value. But when we came here, it actually drops off in terms of its score and comes second to early planting. And that's that reflects our weighting. So if we were to change this back, we can see that those numbers start to change a bit. So we can start to change the weightings, but basically early planting is coming together because it's also collectively coming together here in the 18, 17, 13. So that means that it's getting a higher score because it's got benefits over multiple challenges. If we go back and we say that the early planting is really unfriendly. So these will be drop down menus, but because I've pasted data before, it's not coming through. So I'll just paste these. So now that we've made early planting unfriendly, if we were to up the social inclusiveness in the weighting, we can see early planting really drops off. If we then take that weighting away from social inclusivity, you can see that early planting raises up the list again. So there's that, but there's also this idea of realizing that whatever we do, there's going to be things, concerns and considerations that we have to look at. So we said in early planting that there may be some inclusivity issues. So 2 stars meaning that it's coming up multiple times, and 1 star it's not coming up multiple times. It's coming up more than 0, but not multiple times. So if we were to go back and just make that neutral, it's coming up once and it's moving in our scaling. And if we were to make them both friendly, I think that it might come to the top. Early planting, yeah, is back to the top there, even though it's got some concerns. So it's meant to be used in combination. So we know ponded rice variety is the most important. So, and it's also coming out on our weightings here as most important. But if we choose it, we really need to be aware that it's got limitations. So if we go back to the ponded variety, we can see that we said that it's not providing sustainability or mitigation benefits. So it's something that we have to consider in the context of climate change. Again, it might require substantial support to enable adoption. And that's because there's some limitations that have come in here. So you want to spend time filling through, but you want to have these discussions at the end. So it's really important, these workshop notes that come through, making sure that we type through the different discussions that are having, because the point here is that this is not the end point of the climate adaptation journey. It's just the start point. It's designed to get the discussion going and to get some priorities, but there's so much more that comes after this tool is implemented the first time. It's just that starting point. So that's the overview of Module 3, and look forward to discussing with everybody in the workshop on Wednesday the different elements of this as well. For the people that have sent me their Module 1 and 2, I'm going to send you on Monday your copy of it filled from Modules P1 and 2, and you will start at W3. If you haven't sent me P1 and 2, then you'll have to go from the start and fill it in before that. The other thing that you'll notice is at the moment, it will take some time to save this file because it's big and there's lots of equations and calculations going on. What we're going to do is split modules P1 and 2 to modules 3, so that it's not recalculating everything all at once. So this will be in the final version that comes. The pre-population is separate from the final file. And so that'll get around this problem of it being too big and slow. So if it's really crashing on your computer now, I can send you the split version, but it's something that I'm just making sure that everything is pulling across at the moment, and I don't want to stall us too long. So thanks for listening, and look forward to talking to you on Wednesday. If you're having problems or if something crashes, please let me know in the WhatsApp group, and I'll do my best to overcome that. Thanks, and talk to you soon.